So, hey, it's Jolynn. We're doing Java with Jolynn again. So, hopefully, you have coffee ready. I have the chat open in case anyone wants to ask me questions. Hopefully, I have it to where if you ask a question, everybody in the room can see it. So, please don't feel stupid about asking questions. So, today I have Gavin Parker with me. And Gavin, how long have you been an appraiser?
Been by myself. This is my 22nd year, and I did 1 year under an appraiser for
Okay.
no money. So 23 years.
Fun times.
Yep.
So I didn't realize this. You and I then got started at the same time because I'm starting my 23rd year as well in
Yeah.
real estate or as a mortgage lender this month. So
No
uh,
kidding. So everybody that's on here is realtors, or most of the people that will see them realtors.
realtors, yes, real
Um,
estate agents. That's the only people that I invited on here.
pr-
So
probably,
we're
probably
talking
something you
shop.
didn't know about me was I did sell real estate for a little while. Um, I went to Oklahoma State and
Go
Um,
Pokes.
I I got my real estate license while I was a student there,
Oh wow.
and I sold a couple of houses a year while I was there because I decided flipping burgers at Eskimo Joe's wasn't for me, and I made a lot more money than my friends working 40 hours a week.
Yes.
And that's really where I got my interest in real estate. I don't know much about the realtor side. I'm not pretending to do that, but that is where I actually started real estate was as a freshman in college at OSU.
Well, that's awesome. No, that
Yeah.
is a fun fact that about Gavin that I did not know. So, all right. So one of the questions that I get from people, especially when they're mad at an appraiser, is, Jolynn, who even regulates these people? So where can I go to file a complaint?
The Oklahoma Real Estate Appraiser Board. Um, and it's oreab.com. You can file all of your complaints about us there, and they do get a lot of them. Not all of them are pursued because not all of them are justified. But if you do have a complaint and it's something, and it's like if you've verified it with your lender, or maybe they've talked to an appraiser and something's not right, go through the channels because we do have avenues set to regulate us. And the Oklahoma Real Estate Appraiser Board, they will tell you they're not there as our advocates. They are there to regulate us.
And they are actually under, I was surprised when I learned this. They're actually under the Oklahoma Insurance Department.
Oklahoma Department of Insurance, Oklahoma State Department of Insurance. I tell a lot of people this when they're kind of asking our process. When they find out that our license falls under the insurance department, they don't understand it until I tell them, most of the appraisal process and all the federal regulations are set up for lending. Well, we're essentially, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but we're essentially writing an insurance document to that lender of the market value of that home at that point in time. And that, I believe, is why we fall under the Oklahoma State Department of Insurance for our license.
Yes, and so for those that have been through my lending class, I explained that really the basis of all lending, all the way across the board, is what is the likelihood that you what is the likelihood that this borrower is going to default and not ever make their first payment? And if they don't make their first payment on the property side of things, am I going to have am I going to have to make a whole bunch of repairs to that property? Or can I turn right around and sell it and hopefully get the majority of my money back out of it? And
Yeah,
so that is why we are, seems like, to be picky on appraisers or appraisals or whatever. And it's because we have to look at it from an immediate foreclosure standpoint.
That's right.
All right. So one of the things that I hold on here, I gotta send this to one more person. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk today too about this is just to be quite frank with everyone. April was an extremely challenging month. And one of the things that I had, which is what I called you on, is I had an appraisal come up, and it came in $20,000 lower than the list price. I went to the listing agent and said, "Hey, how in the world did you come up with this value? Where did you get it? Give me your comps. Let me see what I have to work with." Because as a lender, I always try, and Gavin, you and I have talked about this before too. We try to hit the listing price. We don't want anyone to have problems, but you don't go out and quote unquote undervalue a house just because you're feeling ornery that day.
That's right.
Um, we don't want the complaints, the problems. We want everybody to be happy and go on down the way, go on down the road. But this one came in 20 grand short. And I asked the listing agent for her CMA. She never did give it to me. And she kept on saying, "Well, the county assessor says that it's worth this." And it finally dawned on me. She said it so many times that I'm like, all right, well, maybe I finally figured out she never pulled them. So, and this one it was downtown urban area, and there weren't a lot of comps. And I know, I mean, it was kind of a unique little area, but also I think as a just state of the market or state of our industry right now, there aren't, because of sales have slowed down, there's not as much inventory. What do you do when there aren't comps? Like in that situation, there had been one sale in the last 12 months that
Well,
was similar to that property.
I looked at that with you. There was more than one. There was two that weren't the exact floor plan, but they
Mhm.
were in the same building. Well, there's our next best market indicator. So we kind of get forced into using um, what's available, and it is hard when the market's slower, especially like in that case. But in that case, we had one identical floor plan, and it sold for $20,000 less than the contract price. Then we had two floor plans that weren't identical, and they weren't like maybe 200 square feet smaller, something like
Yeah,
that.
it was something like that.
Still, that is a viable comp for us to bypass those and go further back in time, because I think we all know that the market was better in 21, 22 than it was in 23, 24. To go back years and try to grab something from that, or to leave that, because this was a condo or
Hmm.
townhome, I can't remember.
Hmm.
But to leave that complex when there were three viable comps there and identical in one scenario. Um, I didn't read the appraisal. I didn't do an official review of the appraisal. We just talked.
You didn't
Um,
even see it. I
I,
didn't even
I
send it to
felt
you.
like that what you were telling me and what I could see lined up, that the appraisal assignment was done accurately. Um, it opens up a whole new can of worms. Let's say that there weren't two additional. Um, and let's say that I had to go to the next closest competing townhome complex. And Jolynn, let's say that even those two sold at the contract price, or let's say one of them did, we still have to go back and you still, everybody has to be in agreement. It's hard. We can't argue it. I couldn't argue it in court. I couldn't argue it in front of a board of my peers that comp that was identical and in the same building is our best indicator of value. So we are kind of building an appraisal around that at that point, because everything else is not as accurate as that single comp. But in that case, there were two others in that complex, and they have to be used. We can't just leave, and we can't just make up a higher value. And I think maybe there was a sell a couple of years ago that was closer to the
Mhm.
contract price.
That was part of the issue. And as I started really digging into it, looking at all of the data that I could find, which is I kept on asking both real estate agents, give me something, please give me something to work with. Um, One of them gave me comps from Norman, a
Yeah, I
condo
can't do that.
complex in Norman. You can't use that because that's a whole nother market center, you
Yeah,
know? Um, and nobody could ever really give me anything. And then when I went back and just truly looked on the county assessor at the sales through the changing of the deeds, yeah, there were some back in 2022 and 2021 that did sell for the value that they had listed it at. But then you had that one that had sold less.
yeah, and it was really recent. Um, I didn't research that particular cell to see if there was some circumstances that would drive it down. Like I looked at the pictures of it; it looked to be in good condition. I don't know if there was a death or a divorce. I didn't
Hmm.
go that far. So there are some other things that I guess could affect it, but that's still our main indicator. And to kind of go back on what you said, yes, as a business owner, I don't want anybody unhappy. But as an appraiser, I have a job to do that's strictly regulated by USPAP and by federal lending guidelines. So where you're right, we will not bring anything in low just for fun to see if we can tick off a realtor or a lender. I mean, my customer is the lender. I don't want them mad. I don't want the buyer mad. I don't want the seller mad. But there comes a point when we take the business aspect out of it, because I don't want to lose you as a customer. That's business 101. But I don't want to lose my license and the ability to do business. That trumps even making you happy. Um, so like to go full circle, talk about the realtor said there were some in Norman. There comes a point where, sorry, it is what it is. And if I try to
Hmm.
pull a comp out of Norman and put it in this appraisal, we're chasing a value. And for me to chase a value is fraudulent. The paper's no good. The loan may get kicked out later. It's going to come back on you and me.
So
We are not.
is there something that sets your regulations as far as like that so for me, the regulations are like the FHA guidebook or the VA guidebook or Fannie
Right.
Mae's guidebook. So what do appraisers have that they have to follow? Or is
Well,
there?
and it's in each one of our appraisals. Some of the legal jargon, it's in every one of them. We put in there, all of our appraisals have to be USPAP compliant. That's Uniform Standards, Principles, and Appraisal Practices. That is our appraisal Bible. That
Hmm.
is what every appraisal is written to conform to. Then when you start adding Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, they're entities in their own.
Hmm.
They have rules, but they can't trump our rules.
Hmm.
We still, and so most of their loans and that kind of stuff, they're based. They know what our
Hmm.
guidelines are. They may add some to that. You can be added to that, but that is our basis, and it is full of legal jargon. It's hard to read. It's hard to understand. I've been doing this 23 years. We have to take a USPAP class every single year. Um, it's hard stuff, but those are our regulations. That
Okay.
is. what keeps us, when I told you earlier that we should all be following the same rules, that's the rules, USPAP.
Mhm.
And so if you have somebody that's versed in that, an appraiser that you're dealing with, they should know the USPAP rules for the assignment that they're working on.
Okay. Here's another question that I get asked quite frequently. Um, Troy, to answer your question, no, he does not, unfortunately, do VA appraisals. I'll give you a little tiny, like 1 minute spiel about VA appraisals. Appraisers actually have to register and with the VA, they have to apply with the VA and to get their VA designation, they have to have take classes and all that kind of crap as far as what the VA is. And then the VA has their own roster. And as a lender, I can set my own appraisal roster, which Gavin is one of them that is on my roster. Uh, but the VA has their own roster and lenders have no control over it. And it's just whoever the VA picks. And frankly, in the last few years, they've been kind of desperate to get people on it. So um,
I
it's my
choose not to do VA or FHA. I did FHA for about 10 years. For a while, the VA roster was really hard to get on. Right now, they'll take just about anybody because they're so far behind. Um, I, I've been really fortunate. I don't remember who asked the question, Troy. I've been really fortunate with my customers. I really worked hard to get good banks, good quality banks as my lenders, as my customers. And they have enough conventional business to keep me busy. After Jolynn and I were talking earlier, FHA for a while was like doing a home inspection. It was so workload heavy in the field. And then they switched the rules on how you had to be licensed. I let it go, and I've had enough conventional work for 15 years. And we were talking earlier, I'm not going to change at this point. I've got plenty of conventional, but that's part of my. I'm very fortunate to have really good lenders.
And that is something else too that if you don't know, um, FHA changed their guidelines on appraisals. Not every appraiser knows that they changed their guidelines. I have had to send the FHA guidelines to appraisers who have called out ridiculous repairs. So if y'all are ever in that situation where you need it and it's not even my transaction, I don't care. I keep them handy to where all I have to do is click and send. So just shoot me an email or text or whatever and say, hey, Jolynn, send me those FHA guidelines you were saying on your webinar, and I will definitely send them over to you. So I was in a real estate office earlier this week and had the question of the new realtor compensation rules and that are coming down the pike come July. Will that have, which, still there's so much up in the air. No one really knows a little bit about how, it may not change anything. It may disrupt the entire world. It's that implementation thing that we're still not sure about. So how do you foresee that impacting appraisers, appraisals? What's your opinion?
You nailed it. We don't even know what's going to happen yet. I can kind of what realtors are fixing to go through. We went through in 07, 08, the biggest real estate bust in America, and it revamped all of our rules and regulations. And man, and I can't remember the exact date it rolled out, but they did us just like they're going to do you.
It
I
was
think Jolynn
2010.
was when
It was
all of the new
2010
rules.
when HVCC, which is the Home Value Code of
Yep.
Conduct, came into existence.
And UAD, uh,
Mhm.
Uniform Appraisal Data Set. I think is all of that kind of came from that, and they gave us this start date like they've given you. Jolynn and I talked about it earlier. I think you said it's July 1st of this year.
I think,
Is it okay? Well, they did us the same way, and what it looked like when they told us, gave us our, hot date, our start date is totally different than it looks now. So you're going to evolve. Whatever they tell you, there's, you're going to have people in your industry that find loopholes, and they're going to push the limits, and they're going to restructure the language and the rules. And, eventually in 2 or 3 years, you'll know what you're dealing with. With that being said, on the appraisal side, how that affects us, I don't know yet, because we don't know exactly what it's going to look like on your end. But a couple of examples, and I don't want to talk about the real estate stuff to the point to where I don't know everything that's going on there. I do know that they're changing the commission rate from the buyer's side. The buyer's going to have to pay the buyer realtor, and I don't want to act. But what's going to happen is it's going to, whatever it looks like in the end, is most likely going to change the net cash to the seller, probably to the good. Do you all agree with that? Am I on the right track there? Because if there's less commission being paid out on the seller side, the seller's going to net more cash. If the price
yes.
stays the same. But what we don't know is, how is the market going to react when this first hits? Are they going to be happy with the same net that the previous market established, and lower that price by some of the difference in what was being paid to a realtor? Or
What I think is personally is going to happen is either I think that the listing price is going to stay the same. It will net, if a seller is not paying the buyer's side commission, then yeah, obviously, I mean, it's math, 2 plus 2
right.
equal 4, they are going to net more
That's right.
there. If they are paying a buyer's realtor like they do now, I still kind of see our value staying the same.
I do too.
I don't think it'll have as much of I don't, unless I know that there are things, like you all can't put into the MLS, the buyer's agent compensation rate anymore after that. So my thought is I'm not even sure that an appraiser, unless it's in the contract, I don't see an appraiser really even knowing how much
Well,
a buyer's agent is going to be paid on the selling side.
We're working off of the closed price. The only thing we're supposed to factor in right now is any concessions that were paid on behalf of the buyer from the seller. That does have an effect on the net cash to the seller, and we're supposed to make an adjustment. But the sales price is the sales price. Where that money goes, it sounds like it's going to be pretty small difference in what they're going to net. Maybe some, but not a lot, especially if they're going to find loopholes to pay the buyer's realtor anyway. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't think any of us know how that's going to work out, but I don't look for it to do anything to our market. The Oklahoma City market has been so steady that we're so fortunate to be here. Even as an appraiser, a realtor, we don't have these huge fluctuations in our market. We don't have big spikes, so we don't have big valleys, which makes my job a little easier to kind of see what the market's doing. It makes a realtor's job a little easier. And I don't look for something like this to have a big effect on our values.
Are you seeing, as far as like trends going forward from here, do you see us in a declining market right now? Because I know that's a lot of the objections that I hear is, oh, Jolynn, this market's going to crash. I'm just going to wait until, until all the values go back down, then I'll buy.
Well, up until the last, I guess since COVID, felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what the market was doing at all times, and I've been pretty humbled over the last 3 or 4 years. I was wrong in a lot of this is just my opinion based upon my experience, there's no way I thought I would see the lending and the appraisal and the realtor opportunities stay strong when the interest goes from 3% to 8% in 18 months.
Mhm.
And it proved me wrong because we're powering through it, right? I mean, I'm staying busy, you're busy. I don't know if I'm not as busy as I was in 23, but the market hasn't stopped. Um, I
I
I don't
still see multiple offers or people asking me, for updated, letters because Jolynn, we're in multiple offers. And that's another question I have for you. Do multiple offers have any effect on the value? If an agent were to tell you, hey, Gavin, we got 5 offers on this, and, my highest one was, 20 grand over, does that affect the value?
so here is the answer that you're not gonna like and the realtors with us aren't gonna like. It's not just because there is more being offered doesn't make the appraised value worth more. Um, Here's the problem. That property has a market value based upon market data. And if that person who's making this over contract price is not borrowing third party money, they can pay whatever they want. And that will drive the market. The fact of the matter is, I'll throw out a number. What, 95% of our properties are borrowed money. So there's your driving force. And we have regulations through all the industries, being realtors, appraisers, and lending. And just because they want it that bad and they're willing to pay that much doesn't mean it's worth it. Really, the realtor who listed that property knows what it's worth because that's where they listed it. If they thought that it was worth $40,000 more, they would have listed it at that. They all know it's going over, and just because the offers go over doesn't mean I can appraise it for more. Doesn't mean they can't pay cash, but it's not going to affect the value of that appraisal just because 3 people got into a bidding war on it.
And so my
Go ahead.
opinion of that, and tell me if my thinking is wrong, it doesn't help them out. But once they close on that house where they've paid 20 grand over, that now gives the data for the person that's coming along after them in the same neighborhood to, that'll give them a comp to increase the value.
It does. But
It doesn't
there,
help them, it
you know,
helps the person on down the road.
so you're saying they paid cash outside of closing?
No, they don't pay cash outside of closing. Again, ease of Jolynn's brain is, let's say that they set the sales price at $100,000 and someone comes in and pays 110 for it. And that's what they
Yep.
close at is 110. I
Okay.
do the loan at 95,000 because that's 5% down. But then now they're bringing 15,000 because they're bringing the 10,000 over plus their 5% down. So now it closes at 110, and now that has kind of set the new baseline or helped set a new baseline for that neighborhood.
So
So
it
it
had
doesn't
to
help
appraise
them
for
at the
that.
time, it helps the person on down the road that comes in to buy a house later in that same neighborhood.
A little, and see, I look at it a little bit different than you, just a little.
No,
If
and that's
if
why I don't, that's why I'm saying this is the blonde girl lender thinking. I want to know what an
if
appraiser thinks. Says,
if the appraisal was done correctly, even though the original asking price was 100,000, but they settled at 110, and you're doing a loan based off of 110,000, it still had to appraise for 110. So in my eyes, it really not falsely inflated.
no,
Otherwise, it
I
would have.
still have to do the loan based on 100,000 because that's what you appraised it at. It's just when
Oh,
it
yeah, I see what you're
goes
saying.
into the closed database of closed
Yep.
properties, it goes in that it closed at
It
110.
it certainly will, but it's things like this that drive our market forward.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I mean, we're establishing that people are wanting in that market, even at $2 more a square foot, or whatever that
mm-hmm,
particular example works out. So there are lots of driving forces that continuously push our market up at a slow,
mm-hmm.
steady rate. That's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
There was obviously a reason that they were willing to pay $10,000 more. Um, was it a shortage of inventory? Was it because of the location? Was it, there's lots of things, and all of those things together, or it continuously push if we never have something bump up the value, our value set from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's highly likely that something like that can happen. And it doesn't mean that I can't use it as a comp moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
because it did happen, and four parties in there that were involved, and six if you include the lender and the appraiser, being the realtor, the selling realtor, uh, and the buyer and the seller,
Mm-hmm.
that all determined that that was what that property was worth, and came together, and one was willing, they're both willing on both sides. So yeah, it can drive the market up.
Mm-hmm.
Can't just use it alone. I mean, we're going to have to, we have to look at the whole market. But yeah, it does become a comp. Absolutely.
Okay. And so we have another question of, do appraisers look at the pending listings for the possibility of higher comps?
So we're never chasing a higher comp. So I'll be careful there to, if there's so many scenarios, it's a good question. If let's take a neighborhood. There's a neighborhood that has 20 sales in the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a contract that is higher than the highest sale out of those 20, but one of the pending, I think is what she's asking, one that's
Mm-hmm.
pending and not closed, is at this higher amount. Can I use it? I absolutely personally would never chase a pending sale, because that, number one, what's it pending at? When y'all market pending on MLS, you don't tell me that pending contract such and such price. All I can see is the list price.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the contract price, so I don't even know what it's pending at. And with that many sales in the last 12 months, I'm not going to go use it.
Well,
That's
and you
chasing the
can't
value.
according to USAP, correct?
That use
You
back.
can't.
No, I mean, I'm not using closed sales. Now what I do sometimes choose to do, and this is just more information. Let's say that it's a totally different scenario where I only have two sales in a
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood, and they're good sales, but man, I need a third one. But the third one's coming from a neighborhood that's just not the same. It's located near a highway, so it's a noisy. The houses are, I don't want to use any names, XYZ builder instead of ABC builder. Um, I know they're not the same, but I was forced to leave, and it's the nearest competing neighborhood. But the subject neighborhood does have some pending sales. So as a fourth comp, I'll go in there and put it as a pending sale, and I'm going to do the legwork, and I'm going to call that listing realtor. And most of the time, the realtors are really willing to give me information. Rarely in 23 years have I had anybody deny me any information, because the more information y'all can give me, the more accurate I can be. And they will generally tell me what the contract price is, and I will use it as a contributory indicator of value, but
Okay.
not in lieu of a third sale.
Okay.
But good, great question.
Okay. So I like to try to keep these to about 30 minutes. And so last question here for you. Back to kind of what you not quite alluded to in your last answer. Do you like for the listing agent to meet you at the house, especially on maybe one that was hard to comp, and say, here, Gavin, this is what I used to price this? Do you
Okay.
find that offensive? Do you find that that is trying to influence the value, or do you appreciate the data?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying 23 years of dealing with realtors and loan officers, I would prefer them be there. That's not going to be the common answer, but I am an open book. You got things you want to tell me, am I really doing my due diligence if I don't listen to you? Now, what I don't want you to do is start telling me, well, this is the nicest one. Don't use those comps. We need to go south of Wilshire and get into Nichols Hills. That's an extreme example, but I'm just saying I prefer realtors to be there. If I don't talk to the realtors who know that property better than I do, have I done my due diligence on doing that appraisal? I will tell you the new way of doing business is nobody wants to talk to anybody. And I don't do my business that way. Jolynn, you know that I'm not that way. That's why you set me up with this question. I am very pro communication. Think that every appraiser is different. Jolynn, you know your appraisers. Maybe you've got one like me, but you've got one that doesn't want to be borrowed. You probably should tell your realtor, hey, this guy prefer you not be there. This guy, you can talk to him about anything. Just because you tell me something doesn't mean I'm going to use it in my report. I'm going to listen, but I still have to be the one to sign my name and be comfortable and lay my head down that night, go to
And be
sleep.
able to defend that appraiser, that
That's right.
appraisal in front of the appraisal board if it ever were to come to that.
That's exactly right. Okay, so to more accurately answer your question for these realtors, a good way to approach it, because I do like this, I have a lot of realtors who do this. They will ask me up front, hey, when you do this appraisal inspection, would it be okay if I'm there? I'm always 100% for sure. And then a lot of them will ask a follow-up question of, would you like me to bring the sales that I have found in the area? I'm like 100%. Bring them. Make sure I didn't miss them. We're not perfect. Don't let any appraiser tell you that we are, because we're not. We make mistakes. We miss some sales. We miss something. And I don't want my mistake to be out of arrogance of not letting you guys tell me what you want to tell me. Don't tell me what to appraise it for. That gets
That's where it crosses the line.
It does. It crosses the line, and not that I'm not gonna say anything to you, but some people might. There's been a misconception with all the changes that have taken place in the last 10 to 15 years that lenders can't talk to appraisers and realtors can't talk to appraisers, and that is 100% not true. Open lines of communication could avoid a whole lot of confrontation, and every one of us are hiding behind steel curtains, and I'm talking about every industry. Put these barriers up and there can't be any fraud. Well, I'm not going to commit fraud even if I can talk to you, and it's not committing fraud if we communicate. Sometimes I'm seeing something that's a problem, and we can address it right there and not surprise everybody at the closing table. That's part of doing business as an appraiser. So I'm probably in the minority when I tell you that I'm perfectly happy for them to be there always.
All right, good answer. When I first asked Gavin to help me out with this one, he said, Jolynn, back in the day, I used to always go into real estate offices and, talk to realtors and, have Q&A sessions and that sort of thing. You all, if you do want him to come to your office or whatever, just shoot me an email and I'll give you Gavin's contact information. He's as you can tell, a wealth of knowledge. So, Gavin, we appreciate your time. Thanks
No
for
worries.
us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You taught me. So every time I talk to you, I learn something. So I always appreciate you being willing to answer my stupid questions.
And tell us to any of them. Yeah, like you said, I used to go in like they would have a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, and brokers would ask me in, and I don't bring a presentation. All I did was sit in front of all the realtors there and let them ask questions, and they loved it. I liked it because we got to head off problems at the pass, but we haven't done it. I haven't done it in years, but I'm certainly willing to do it. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll try to get it for you.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you all for joining us today, and everyone have a great day and go sell some houses. And Gavin, go appraise. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.